Welcome back. Well, today we are going into the Norway case, and we're going to cover the day one portion of Norway. But first, before we do that, let's get into finding out what this case is all about. We'll go look at all the lawyers. We'll see how they laid the case out. So we're going to avoid JW for all of this. And on Avoid JW, we'll put all the links in the description so you guys can also click it and look at this yourself. So here it is, Norway, the price we pay, Jehovah's Witness Appeal 2025. This is the Borgarting Court of Appeal, Borgarting, Lagmannsrett. Excuse me for my Norwegian, it's not that good. But this is in Oslo, Norway. This is where this is the appeal court. And this article, in fact, all of these days are published by Miss Usato and last updated February 3rd. Okay, so let's get into it. We will provide a day-by-day account of the second phase of the trial between the Norwegian government and the Jehovah's Witness organization. And this case arose due to decisions made between 2021 and 2024 in which Jehovah's Witnesses were denied state funding and eventually lost their official registration as a religious group. Now, in January of 2024, the Oslo District Court held a trial examining the Jehovah's Witness practices, particularly the baptism of minors and the shunning of those who leave the faith. Now, the court investigated whether these practices violated the Norwegian law and the children's rights, focusing on the organization's policies and their impact on individuals and families. Now, former Jehovah's Witnesses testified about their challenging past, being baptized at young age and later experiencing social exclusion upon leaving the faith. And as a result, on March 4th, 2024, the court ruled against the organization, revoking its registration as a recognized religious community in Norway and cutting off the state subsidies. Now, this means they lost public, and I'll show you this on the screen just so you have the numbers. This means they lost the public financial support in Norway, including they were sentenced to pay $108,000 and losing $500,000 of donated funds in the trial costs. So you see, the trial cost them $500,000. That was last year. It was a 14-day trial. So, or 10 days in court anyways. So that cost them $500,000. They had to pay the court costs. That was $108,000. So this is all donated money from, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, well, guess what you're paying for. This is this kind of stuff. So in response to the deregistration, the organization adjusted its disciplinary practices concerning shun members. And they did this on March 15th, 2024. So for those of you out there that think these cases don't do a lot, this case in particular is changing the religion. It's changing the Jehovah's Witness religion, this one case. And the governing body will see they're even wearing ties to match the flag of Norway. Now, an appeal trial commenced on February 3rd, 2025, and Jehovah's Witnesses will challenge the previous ruling to restore their registration, regain state support, and at the same time, the prosecution will revisit the issues of child baptism and shunning, assessing their compliance with the Norwegian laws and children's rights. Okay, so here's the legal representatives, the government attorney, Liv Inger, Joan Gabrielson, legal assistant Kristen Halso Arvik, representing the state of Norway. So this is the main lawyer right here, and this is Kristen, the other lawyer for Norway. And down here, where the pictures are, this is Anders Risdell representing Jehovah's Witnesses, and then there's a bunch of Jehovah's Witness lawyers representing Jehovah's Witnesses. Okay, what you should know before the trial. Both parties submitted the closing argument to the Borgarting Court of Appeal in Oslo on January 20th, 2025. And the case pertains to case number 24, this long number there. Now, the Watchtower's argument is misinterpretation of doctrine. The state wrongly assumes Jehovah's Witnesses enforce strict shunning, while the organization argues that personal relationship after leaving our individual choice is not mandated by doctrine. So the misinterpretation, the state wrongly assumes Jehovah's Witnesses enforce strict shunning. This is their argument. While the organization argues that personal relationships after leaving are individual choices. You see, this is a lie because we all know that when you leave the organization, we covered this through their elders book, it's called disassociation. And disassociated ones are announced on the platform, and they are treated the same as they are shunned like a disfellowship person. So I don't know why they're arguing what they do in court. You see, this is what they do. They waste the court's time, waste the court's money. Procedural error and lack of evidence. The decision was made without a thorough investigation, relying on biased testimonies without concrete proof of harm. BS. We've seen this all over the world. We watched this court last year. Now we got to watch it again for another 10 days as these guys waste money beating the same things down, the same things that they do, the same lies in court. Now, violation of constitutional and human rights. The ruling contradicts Norway's constitution and European Convention on Human Rights regarding religious freedom. They have their religious freedom. They just don't get the money. They can go door to door. They're not banned. They can go to their kingdom halls. They can have weddings. They just have to go get registered downtown. So there's no violation on their human rights. Now, no justification for state intervention. The government's reasoning is inconsistent, and revoking registration and funding does not protect individuals, but instead stigmatizes a religious group. Well, of course it's going to stigmatize the cult. When you want to operate a cult and you want to shun people and you want to kill people over your blood doctrine, Jehovah's Witnesses, you are already stigmatized all over the world. You are a cult. So what do you expect? Norway's just taken a stand. They're not going to pay for cults to send their money to New York and not help the public, not help the poor. Jehovah's Witnesses, get over it. You're a cult. And that's easy for me to say. I was in the religion for 30 years, and I know what the indoctrination of a cult is like and how they beat this stuff into their people. I've experienced it. It takes a lot of work to get your mind out of the cult. This takes years of hard work. Now, they're arguing discriminatory decisions. No. They would be treated the same as Scientology. There's no discrimination here. A cult is a cult is a cult. And you want to act like a cult and shun people, Jehovah's Witnesses, you will be treated this way. It's not discriminatory. This is how you treat other people. This is how you treat members that you disfellowship. That's discriminatory, Jehovah's Witnesses. You guys are discriminatory. You see how you twist things in court and you lie? It just makes all of us really angry. But I'm glad we got some good Norwegian lawyers in there fighting you guys, because you guys have to be exposed worldwide. Now, legal challenges. This is Jehovah's Witnesses again. They're saying we'll present expert testimony evidence to argue this unjust discriminatory. So we can turn that around. Jehovah's Witnesses are discriminatory. They discriminate everyone out there. They demonize everyone. So this should be an easy one for Norway to argue. Now, here's Norway's arguments. A violation of religious freedom and children's rights. The government argues that Jehovah's Witnesses enforce strict shunning, and yes they do, and restrict individuals' freedom to leave the faith, yes they do. There's so many of us on the outside that could be a testimony, but in Norway there's a few. It's that country, and but there's thousands and thousands of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses around the world that can testify to this. Now, this practice, including exclusion of baptized and unbaptized children, constitutes a psychological violence. Yes, it does, under all laws, and they're saying under their Norwegian law, and it violates the UN Convention on the Rights of a Child and a human being, an adult. So this is great. No violation of religious freedom. That's what they're saying. While the state denies funding and marriage authority, the Jehovah's Witnesses remain free to practice their religion. The decision is justified as it protects public order and individual rights. And there's no violation of freedom of association. The organization retains full autonomy, legal recognition, but does not qualify for state benefits due to harmful practices. Any interference, if present, is lawful and necessary. And not a case of discrimination. The same legal criteria applies to all religious groups. Jehovah's Witnesses were denied funding based on the documented exclusion practices, not their beliefs. And legally sound and procedurally correct. The decision was based on Jehovah's Witness publications, testimonies, external reports, procedural errors, if any. They do not affect the ruling's legal validity. Now, the Norwegian government argues that Jehovah's Witness exclusion policies violate fundamental rights, justifying the loss of state funding, and they maintain that the decision is legal, proportionate, and necessary, urging the court to uphold the ruling and require Jehovah's Witnesses to cover the legal costs. And on the other hand, Jehovah's Witnesses contend that the decision lacks legal grounds, is based on misinterpretation, and unfairly targets their community. And the trial will ultimately determine whether the state's actions were lawful and justified in a democratic society. Now, the next subheading in support of our fellow former witnesses, Jan Nielsen has been courageous, outspoken advocate in exposing the harmful practices of the Watchtower in Norway, testifying 3 times in the process, and 3 times in the process, just days before the trial began, he discovered that his father, a Jehovah's Witness elder in Norway, had been called as a final witness. Given that there was no apparent reason for his father to testify for Watchtower, Jan took to social media to share his thoughts. And shortly afterward, again for an unknown reason, he heard that his father was pulled from the list of testimonies. You see, if his father came on, the court could see here why Jan can't even talk to his own father. This is how this religion draws family divisions. And so they pulled his father from the list. So Jan's post was featured in an article on Avoid, which you can find on the link tab. We'll take a quick look at it. Vartland, a Norwegian paper, had also been following this trial closely since 2024. And their first page of headlines, one from last year, featured Numi, a former witness who was also shunned from her family as a teenager. And another from Vartland is featured on February 3rd. And we send our love and support through the next 2 weeks to all of those in the trial. Now we're going to take a look at some of the links. This is a link that was on this. The price we paid Jehovah's Witnesses. This is the 2024 trial. So that's all there. If there will be links to this in this video. If you want to go back and take a look at it, it's all documented from last year. And there will be a link to this. This is Jehovah's Witnesses losing the grants and appeal in Norway. They lost the trial versus Norway. This was March 4th, 2024. And we'll have a link to this. It's funny how Jehovah's Witnesses start changing their doctrine. Shocking doctrinal change, 2024 Governing Body Update 2. The handling of wrongdoing, greeting, disfellowship, relaxed guidelines on dress attire. Check the guy's tie out. Mark Sanderson. He has the Norwegian colors on his tie. We'll just blow that up. I think they have that in one of the articles here. So this will be, we'll put this link in there. This is another article done March 15th showing how they changed a lot of their rules. This is how bad they want that money out of Norway, because you see, once they lose the money in Norway, they have, well, it'll be a domino effect. All these other countries. and Jehovah's Witness religion is based on other people's money. It runs based on getting the taxpayers' money. So without the taxpayers' money, without free taxes, no taxes, because this religion does nothing to help people, it will soon fall. So we'll see what happens through this court case and what happens soon after. Now, there's another article we'll pin. It's recognizing the value of advocacy, Jan Nilsen's journey with Norway, explaining the process with Jan Nilsen, working through all of this. Jan's advocacy was a surprise even for him, as he was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. And the process of waking up, fading, being an anonymous activist to come out as himself with his story and mission in helping in the Norway's media and legal outcomes. And now he is an elected politician, is part of a Labour Party group, and will be for the next 4 years. In the process of fading, he talks about that. It's slow. It happens over years. I know I left in 2012, and I had no clue. I was even in a cult. It takes time to realize all these things once you get out. And like he said, he got stuck in the twilight zone where you aren't really able to move on because you want to dodge the shunning or at least postpone it as long as possible. And he felt my family, who are Jehovah's Witnesses, deserved to see my 3 children grow up. It was a difficult balance. Exposing anonymously, he says, more and more I felt the need to speak out, so I started participating anonymously in several articles in the media, and one journalist followed my journey and all of my mental struggles for years and wrote a long article about it. And he says, I was invested in the XJW activism, mainly Reddit and Twitter for years. I was one of the moderators on XJW Reddit. And through my activism, I slowly got the process started to remove funding of Jehovah's Witnesses in Norway, and keeping the balance slowly became impossible. And yes, it has helped me a lot. This has all been like a huge therapy session. It was really messed up mentally back in 2016 through to 2019. And he says, I spent a lot of time in therapy in a mental hospital with huge emotional scars, but being able to write about everything, talk about it, being part of a process with a goal has also helped me heal. And I'm now in a totally different mental state than back then. And if I'm going to get it ahead in life, I can't continue to hide what I feel. And during this, there's a picture of Jan. And during this entire process, he says, I saw the answers from the Watchtower where they completely denied the shunning in their letter to the government. And at this point, I just had enough, and I decided to show my face and reveal my identity and how I felt. You can only handle the lies for so long, right? Now, I'm just a guy doing what I myself feel is the best for me in my life. I don't want to tell anyone what they should do. We all must figure out what is best for us. For me, though, the written word, being careful and accurate, has been the best. I'm not the type that yells in a crowd, holds signs, and walks in protests. But others might feel the need to do that in their way. And the only thing I would ask everyone is to be respectful. I still have friends and families that I love that are Jehovah's Witnesses, as does almost everyone that is out. And I've been a Jehovah's Witness for 35 years. It's a struggle, it's hard, and I feel for them. And the most important part is patience and accuracy. Always have patience. And being shunned, he highlights the most important part is patience and accuracy. Always have patience. The process regarding funding in Norway started for me in 2018. Now it's 2024. There will be a 2-week trial. This is last year, folks. Now we're on to this year. And this might be appealed for years and end up in the ECHR in Strasbourg several years from now, maybe in 2027. No point rushing it. Always be accurate, be subtle, underplay rather than fire with big cannons. It makes the journalists more interested when you are trustworthy and don't shout from the rooftops. That's my experience. Also, being able to write down my own written opinions and essays and get them published has been a huge advantage. So, how to support others. So here's Jan in court, and that's 2023 trial. Now, he says how to support others. He says, to be honest, we Norwegian ex-Jehovah's Witnesses have a whole crew of strong voices that were willing to participate in the trial. Lots of witnesses. We got this covered. We appreciate all kinds of moral support throughout the world. Feel free to follow the trial, share the information with anyone around you, contact local media, your local legislator. They need to be aware of what's going on. Watchtower demands blind loyalty with one hand and denies any responsibility with the other hand. He says, when I first started seeing the statements the Watchtower was releasing involving this, it was completely shocked. Now I've seen this in writing and heard it in court so many times that it's just become absurd, a weird thing. Most Jehovah's Witnesses don't know about this. Watchtower demands blind loyalty with one hand and denies responsibility with the other hand. So, he says, then in their external communication to the government, to the media, especially in the court, they spin a totally different story. On this side, Watchtower has absolutely no responsibility over the choices each witness makes. It's all a personal decision, whether it's shunning, blood, judicial reviews, or belief system. They then are remote advisors that don't tell anyone what to do. It's all up to each separate member to decide, and no one pressures them. You see, I covered the elders' book, folks, just on the last video. It's not like that. They have strict policy in their elders' book to disassociate, disfellowship if you leave. You can't leave the religion. And Jan talks about this. So he ends up, he says, notice that this is a case is not Watchtower versus apostates. It's Watchtower versus the state of Norway. And the state of Norway covers all expenses and uses us ex-JWs as witnesses. We're represented by 2 governmental lawyers. This means that all of our financial expenses will be covered by the state and we risk no personal retributions. And you see, if Watchtower loses, they have to pay the expenses. Last year it was $108,000. Okay, so here's an article we will pin. Jan learns that Jehovah's Witnesses have presented his father as a witness in their upcoming case, and he questions this. He wonders about it. So, but it looks like they pulled that. And this is just a picture of the lawyers. There's the other lawyer for the state. This is about their firm. There's a link on their firm. And they're one of the leading lawyers in Norway, leading law firms within civil disputes. And they say in their website that their focus is on construction, fabrication, energy, professional liability, company law, disputes, and real estate. And then they have something on Risdell, his lawyer. He's apparently one of the best lawyers in Norway, and he's top ranked under dispute resolution and chamber and legal 500. Okay, so now we get into the appeal, day 1. And it's quite a short article, so we'll cover it. Okay, so this is the appeal day 1. I'll blow this up so you can follow along with me, and we'll just read through it. Here we go. So again, thanks to Miss Usato for publishing this for us all. And the heading here is, those who undergo baptism are fully aware of the community's expectations and exclusion practices. This is what the Jehovah's Witness lawyer says. This is their day in court. Oslo, Norway, on Monday, 9 a.m., February 3rd, 2025. The trial between the government of Norway and Jehovah's Witness began at the Borgarting Court of Appeals. And the area was filled with the former and active Jehovah's Witnesses and journalists. Was so packed that some had to be transferred to another courtroom to watch on video. The first day of the trial was devoted to the opening statement of the Jehovah's Witness lawyer. He began by strongly criticizing the district court's ruling, arguing that the state had not conducted a thorough investigation into any specific cases of child abuse within the community. And he emphasized that the children aged 15 are legally recognized as mature enough to choose their religious affiliation. and those who undergo baptism are fully aware of the community's expectations and exclusion practices. And Risdale argued that the court's ruling essentially labels baptism itself as a psychological violence, which he refuted by describing the ceremony as a joyous and voluntary event for believers. And he maintained that the religious teachings and exclusion practices are well known to those who commit to the faith, and that the exclusion does not always result in severe social consequences. That's maybe for those that fade away and do nothing. But if you quit the religion, they meet with you, and then they go back and they announce your name, that you're disassociated and you're treated like a disfellowship person. It's in their elders book. I don't know how they can run from this stuff. So the elders book is the elders book, and that's unless they change their elders book and they want to change their religion a couple times more. But presently, today, they shun you when you leave the religion. Okay. Religious freedom and ECHR ruling. Risdale framed the state's actions as an unlawful interference with religious freedom. Citing Article 9 of the European Convention, he referred to the recent ruling by the European courts, which upheld the right of LV religious community in Austria to be officially registered. And the Austrian religion community was denied registration on grounds that there is already another LV religious community in the country, but was upheld by Europe's highest court in that it involved a violation of religious freedom. This precedent, he argued, contradicts the Norwegian state's position that denying Jehovah's Witness official recognition constitutes a human rights violation. Does it? No. You see, it's not like Russia. They're not banned. They can go to their meetings. They just don't get the money. This is all about the money. So anyways, he also countered the state's argument that Jehovah's Witnesses can operate freely without registration and subsidies, asserting that denying official recognition has signified consequences such as members losing rights to religious marriages, which has caused distress among those wishing to wed in the place of worship. What about the distress of the kids that are disfellowshipped? What about the distress of people that walk away and they get shunned and they can no longer see their families? This is very minute stress compared to leaving the religion. And this is what the court is really showing these guys. But anyways, let's listen to them. According to a source inside the courtroom, Risdale argued that the elders would lose their clergy penitent privilege without the registration. Good for them. They don't need it. And this is their legal protection for staying silent on matters where crimes are committed. You mean where they hide pedophilia? Where crimes are committed by Jehovah's Witnesses have been divulged to elders as part of their confessional process. All of these religions that hide pedophilia, because that's what it is. It's pedophilia all over the earth. This penitent, clergy penitent privilege is about hiding pedophilia. That's it. In every religion I've seen, Catholics, Mormons, all of them. And now the Jehovah's Witnesses are the biggest culprits on the earth. So challenging the state interpretation of religious practices. You look at that guy, Risdale, he's his face, eh? Anyways, let's carry on. A witness from Oslo, Christian Foss. So these are just naming, these are all your lawyers. Jason Wise, left to right. A witness from Oslo Translating Center, Christian Foss, and Anders Risdale. Risdale warned against the state interpreting religious doctrine, arguing that it lacks theological expertise. He criticized the court for basing its conclusion on biblical texts rather than Jehovah's Witness actual teachings and practices. And he also questioned why the state had historically allowed the community's registration but had now reversed its stance, implying that the increasing secularism may be influencing the state's stricter position. Okay, let's move on. The defense of exclusion as a loving arrangement. The lawyer acknowledged that Jehovah's Witness practice exclusion but refuted claims that it equates to psychological violence. He explains that Norway has a population of over 5 million and points out that the religious community only has 12,000 members in Norway, and that there is therefore no question of extensive social distancing. He emphasized that the exclusion is intended to encourage repentance and reintegration into the community. Furthermore, he noted that the state has not presented any concrete examples of children in Norway suffering from exclusion, undermining its argument that children's rights are being violated. And Risdale concluded that while exclusion may be challenging for some, it is an inherent part of religious freedom. Jehovah's Witnesses plan to call witnesses throughout the trial to testify that exclusion has sometimes benefited individuals in their personal and spiritual lives. Bullshit. The state is set to present its opening statement on Tuesday, where it will argue that the exclusion practices violate fundamental rights, and the case is expected to last 9 days with testimonies and further legal arguments. What a big waste of money. Anyways, I hope Jehovah's Witnesses lose and have to pay for it all, but we'll see what happens. Okay, courtroom where this opening statement, the closing comments. Now, his argument is that 15-year-olds are mature enough to make a lifelong religious commitment. Bullshit. Including the risk of being disfellowshipped is deeply flawed in the nicest way of putting it. He insisted exclusion is merely a loving arrangement and that those who leave must accept the social cost as part of their religious freedom. But what about the youngest children being baptized, those as young as 7 or 8, which is not uncommon in Jehovah's Witnesses? Good question. And if you look around the world, this is very common. Risdale wants to look around the world at other countries, so I think it would be good for Norway to look around the world at what's happening all around the world, and we'll see the same thing in every country. So a 7-year-old barely understands long-term consequences, let alone the complex doctrine, disfellowshipping, and shunning. And how can a child at such a tender age possibly grasp that they are committing to a system where if they later change their mind, they may lose their entire social and family support system? And Risdale frames this as a matter of religious liberty, but in reality, he is advocating for a system that allows children who are not even old enough to vote, drive, or fully comprehend the implications of their choices to be subjected to demanding and psychological distressing consequences. And if religious freedom comes at a cost of children being cut off from their families for decisions they made before they even reached adolescence, then we must seriously question whether that freedom is truly justifiable. His argument comparing the number of Jehovah's Witnesses in Norway to the state's population is grossly fallacious. It does not matter if there is 12 Jehovah's Witnesses or 12,000. Even in a minority religious group, most members are strangers to each other. We as individuals only care about our nearest and dearest, our friends and family, and no one feels deprived when they can talk to strangers, even in their own group. People are socially and psychologically deprived only when they're cut off from family and friends. Like on our side, Jehovah's Witnesses are trying to make it look like we're cut off, we can't operate. But you see, that's a twist. That's what they do to those they shun. They're completely in the dark. So this religion is trying to flip it, make them the martyrs in the court. And really the martyrs, the ones that are abused and violated psychologically, are the disfellowshipped ones. This is a no-brainer to all of us on the outside, but not to these Jehovah's Witnesses. It ends up saying no one feels deprived when they can talk to strangers in their own group. And with this sort of logically unstable argumentation, one wonders if Risdale and the Jehovah's Witnesses he represents are only interested in winning a court case at the expense of honesty and integrity. Nicely put. So that's it for day one. That brings us an end to day one. And they'll lie in court. So we'll get into it. This is only day one, so we'll see what happens. Okay, well, that brings an end to day one. We'll see you guys on the next video. We'll hopefully cover day 2, day 3. Okay, bye for now. And remember, keep living your life with love. Don't let all this stuff upset you like it does me. But I know it irritates us, but it has to go through. We have to sit here and listen to them lie in court and say that this shunning thing isn't a big deal. That's what they're saying in court. And they're making it look like they're the ones being violated in court, when really it's the ones that are shunned. Okay, folks, well, we'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.